listening to Get Yourself the Job with Jennifer Hill and Brandon Maslan, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, and thank you so much for being here with us today for Get Yourself the Job with Brandon and myself. We are so happy to have you here today as we dive into everybody's favorite topic when it comes to job hunting, resume writing. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy, depending on the thoughtfulness that you put into it. So today, before we introduce you to today's guest, I want to thank our sponsors, Markham Search LLC. Markham Search offers premier professional recruiting services throughout the United States, and they can offer temporary services, executive search, and a plethora of other services. So please do keep them in mind for all of their potential recruitment services that they can provide you with. So as promised, today we're going to focus on resume writing. Now, if you have any burning resume writing questions, you can feel free to comment live with us and interact with us live on the LA Talk Radio Facebook page. And we'll do our best as we go through today's show to interact with you or to answer any comments we may miss after the show. So without further ado, I hand it over to you, my friend Brandon, to introduce today's guest.
Absolutely happy to do it, and always great to join you, Jennifer. And yeah, one of the great things about every time I hear you talk about our sponsor, Markham, the second recruiting company I ever worked at was Markham Search, and that experience of working there and getting the resumes and really that kind of high touch and again, how I met you for the first time. And so the power of a good resume is everything. The power of first impression is everything, to be honest. And so that's a perfect segue to our incredible, awesome guest. The old adage, you tell the universe your plans and it laughs. And so we had something else scheduled for today. And at 3:47 Pacific time, I called a friend, a compadre, a client, someone I've been partnering with for years. And I hung up. I was like, no, I don't want to bug them. And they called me right back. And I said, do you want to be on the show? And so here we are. But the truth is, the timing could not be better. This person just got their dream job and they deserve it. And I'll tell you why. This person's name is Chris Surette. Chris is a man of integrity, creativity, innovation, transparency, authenticity. He's what makes the industry, and when I say industry, we're talking about the entertainment industry. He works for a long time, worked out of Burbank, at CBS Interactive, which is the interactive branch of CBS Studios. He does everything. Every time you see a trailer, anything you see something that says, hey, I want to watch that show, Chris has his hands in it. He is the title creative director, might be the most perfect title for him, but it's that word creative that I love because he's such a nuts and bolts kind of guy. He can build you anything. He took almost the entire company virtual in a heartbeat this year when they needed to do it. And it's because he makes things happen, but it's his creative spark, his passion, his drive. He manages up well. He manages down incredibly well. Everyone who works for this guy is really just better for it, including mutual friend Mike Miles, who is how I met him. Before that, he was at Warner Brothers. He was NBCU, Warner Brothers again. He's been all over, and I'm telling you, he's going to a job that I couldn't script better. And that's why I asked him to be on, because he got this job by sending a killer resume and actually a killer cover letter. So we'll cover both today. The importance of a great resume. These are arts. They're not even sciences. It's art. You got to really tailor it. You got to make it creative. So it's no wonder that he landed his perfect job on a resume or a cover letter, because this is what he does. He puts things out there that are just amazing. And I could tell you, I'm a better coach and person for knowing him. So small intro, small bar. Chris, thanks for joining us, man, especially last minute.
Yeah, Brandon, good to be here. And what a great introduction. I hope I live up to it.
I'm sure you will, Chris. Well, it's so great to have you here with us, and I am absolutely enthralled. I want to know what this magic cover letter was that the CEO personally brought up in the interview. I've never heard of such a story before. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I found the link online, and you always think, oh, okay, I'll apply, but you don't really expect to have much come from it. And in this case, it started a great journey. So I start in a week. But the cover letter it was just perfect. The job is perfect, as Brandon had said. It's like, oh my God, this perfect opportunity kind of came in. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get that. So I really took my time crafting the cover letter, thinking about the position, but also it aligns perfectly with part of my background. Like part of my background is all, like Brandon had mentioned, all creative marketing and running teams and leadership and all that. But the other part of one of my hobbies aligns perfectly with it as well. So it was a two for as far as like, okay, both halves of my life align for this. But what I really did is took a step back and crafted a cover letter over 2 days. I didn't just rush it through or do something really quick. I wrote it. I wrote a draft. It's like a creative project. And I stepped back and I reread it. Okay, I added it. I crafted more. I thought about it some more. So it took 2 days to kind of end up where it was like, okay, this is good to submit. Along with the resume, which I already had been working on, I also optimized that even a little more as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, Chris, because I think this is such a great topic to address. Over the years, I've been asked numerous times, is our cover letter still relevant? And I've actually personally said they're not. So this is news to me, and this is great to hear that cover letters can still make a difference in today's day and age. A few questions about that. Did you send the cover letter as an attachment, or was it in the body of the email? That's a question I get asked a lot, is how do you even send a cover letter? What is considered a cover letter, or was it something you uploaded on a website as part of the application process?
It was exactly that. It was part of the application process. So there was a resume upload and then a cover letter upload. So I dove in. The job description was great. Like I said, it was tailor-made for me and my background. But I got to tell you, it's really funny because it was a long interview process with many different people across the company I'm going to. And I met with like senior leadership, and literally he called out, your cover letter was fantastic. And I wanted to meet you because of the cover letter. I'm like, great. So in this one case, it is definitely important.
Chris, did they say
really
specifically what it was about your cover letter that resonated with them so much?
It showed the passion for the space. It showed the knowledge, the passion, and along with calling out my professional background, it also called out my passion for the space that I will be working in. And that was what got the attention. It was kind of both, but also really just the passion behind everything. They could see it.
Yeah,
that really. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's so powerful. Passion, whether we're talking about passion when you're networking, passion when you're interviewing, or passion in any form of writing. You know, you have a piece of paper, whether it's a cover letter or a resume. And if there's a way that you can have your heart and soul shine through and just have people get that essence, that je ne sais quoi, that's something that really has Chris be Chris, Brandon be Brandon, whatever it is, and have that come through on paper, it's truly magic. I mean, I think that's incredible, Chris. And I would be curious to know too, just while we spend a minute or two more on the cover letter, because it could be an lost art form that could help people to really get their dream job. I mean, that's many people's goals. That's why a lot of people tune into this show. So Chris, was there anything in particular? I know you said you shared your passion. Was there a format that you used? Was it a long cover letter? Was it 3 or 4 paragraphs? Was it more condensed? Any other advice that you could offer to our listeners and viewers out there?
Yeah, it was actually long. And to fit everything in, it was like a page and a half.
Wow. Okay.
And I know, and I showed it to a few people, and their first thing was, this is way too long. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I'm going to submit it because it contains everything. They can read it or not read it. In this case, they did read it, and it had everything in there as far as my background, the passion. And while I was writing it, though, like I said, I took the creative process to really make sure I communicated what I wanted to get across. I put my personality into it as well. So my personality was coming through along with the background and the passion. And I just felt like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to be me, put everything in there and see what happens. And obviously it worked out quite well.
I would say that's an understatement, man. But as you were explaining the job, it really was, you say tailor-made, but this is what I always say, even cover letter or resume, it's not going to get you the job necessarily, but it can prevent you from getting the job and prevent you from getting considered. Now, in this is the exceptional case though, where we should say usually, traditionally, but in these rare instances, it's why never underestimate it. But I love what you talked about, which is a bit of my theory when I took the bar exam as a young lawyer, which is I'm not failing this thing because I don't know it. Like I'll dump everything I've got into it. And it sounds like you took a little bit of that approach to the cover letter, which is I'm not trimming it down. This is who I am. This is my passion. I'm going to put it out there. I think that is the beauty of a great cover letter. There's an art to it. And the art is show who you are. My nails on a chalkboard moment is when I read a resume or a cover letter or definitely a LinkedIn profile, and there's none of the spirit of a person in there. And Chris, as probably our audience could tell, is all personality. And to hold that back it wouldn't be a service to you or the company. So Chris, anything else that you did? I know you said it was a page and a half. Did you talk about your experience and your passion? Anything else from a flow or format perspective that maybe people can utilize?
Yeah, a couple things actually. And that's one reason why I couldn't shorten it, any less than a page and a half, was I'm familiar with the company and I'm actually a viewer of their content. So going back years, I've been a consumer of this company's content. I know the brand. So what I talked about was my passion for the space kind of first. Then I went into the history of knowing their content, but also their content, but in the space that I'm going into, I get magazines. I watch online content. I'm immersed in this culture. Let's just put it that way. Then I went into my professional background and how it dovetails with the love of this content, with my background in streaming marketing, creative, running teams. So it was actually like 3 different pieces. And that's why it ended up being a page and a half. But it covered all bases. It covered everything that I needed to kind of talk about. Like I said, I let it go a little longer because I put some of my personality in there. But it also, by showing the personality, it was showing how well I know this space and this culture, along with knowing their brand. So I think it all kind of came together, and that's why I was like, I don't want to cut anything out.
Yeah, Chris, I was going to say, I love what you shared that I think is such an important point to highlight for our viewers and listeners out there, is that what Chris just shared is that he talked about why he wanted to work for the company. And that's something we're going to get into more in a couple of these later episodes on mock interviews and interview questions. And one of the trickiest questions that you'll be asked in an interview or in a cover letter is why do you want to work for us? And I've heard over the years so many blasé answers of like, oh, I really like you guys. You guys are nice. I really like you. You're a nice company. Who cares? Have some passion, show your gusto, bring your true experience. And those are the people, honestly, where if you really care passionately about what a company is up to, and if you tie that into everything you do, tie that into the resume, the cover letter, every interview you have, every email you send or correspondence with them, that's really going to come across. And I also invite people, I remember many years ago, there was somebody who I was helping get a job. And the advice I gave the person, they were in a field they loved for like 10, 12 years. They loved their field. But there was a job that was paying them like $100,000 or $200,000 more in a different field that was super boring. In this person's case, they came from tech and this new field was like luggage, right? And I said to the person, I said, are you sure you want to do this? I know it's more money, but it doesn't seem like you're passionate about it. And he said, yeah, I still want to do it because it's good money, and money, is what a lot of people are motivated by. And unfortunately, he left his 12-year job in tech for, $100,000, $200,000 more dollars at this job working in luggage and bagging, and was miserable and wound up leaving that job and not working, after about 3 months. And so it's important to align your values with the values of the company. It might be an industry you know nothing about, in which case talk to a lot of people and see if it could be something you're passionate about. But notice that could be a red flag. If you're not really lit up the same way Chris was lit up about this organization, maybe just pause and wait for something that does light you up. One of my favorite quotes is a quote by Harold Thurman, or Howard Thurman, I believe it is, who says, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go and do that, because what this world needs is people who have come alive. And I think that throughout whatever interview job hunting process you're in, it's important to always come back to that and ask yourself, what makes me come alive, and will this job help me get there? And then write the cover letter from that perspective.
So I love that. I mean, I do. And you know, I talked to Chris as he went through this, and I think, Chris, every time you and I talked, I was like, there's nothing, just be you, right? There was no, I don't have any genius advice for Chris, because this was his passion. This is what he's meant to do. They would be lucky to have him, and he'd be lucky to work there. And it's wonderful when those things align. So following that passion and that heart. Chris, moving to the resume, if we can, tell me about that journey, because I know not only did you have a resume, but you worked with a resume expert. You know, where did it begin? Where did it get to? You know, what tips can you have for people to really improve their resume to make it more marketable?
Yeah, I did work with an outside professional, because I had a resume that I had done. It was more of like here's a list of my background and some accomplishments and all that. But once I started working with her, our first meeting was an hour-long interview. She was interviewing me about who I was, what my background was. And then we had, 3 or 4 meetings to really kind of dive in. And then I had to kind of explain the space that I work in. But she was really good at pulling out and putting in success stories and metrics and crafting a whole package rather than just a list of your previous jobs. And that, I think, is what really helped. It's funny, because the place that I'm going to, every single person that I met with, and I had several interviews, it was a few week process, started the conversation with, wow, you have the most amazing resume and background. And it was key to all that work of kind of crafting the whole story instead of just, like I said, a list of things. And it was really interesting, because I applied online, and Brandon, like you and I always talk, you don't expect much to come from an online application. First of all, you never know if the position is actually open, or is it filled with somebody internally. But you can't let that hold you back. But at the same time, I applied, and it was legitimate. They reached out 2 days later and set up, the first of many interviews. But the one other thing I will tell you, going back to the cover letter for a brief second, is the senior leadership who looked at the cover letter said, I look at cover letters a lot, and this one just grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about telling that, crafting that story. Yeah, I love that you talked about crafting that story, Chris. That you need to craft a story, that a resume and a cover letter should craft a story. Now, I think that Chris is uniquely lucky because he's a storyteller, right? So, I mean, it certainly helps. But you spend so much time. That's the thing that you've said a few times here today, Chris. I think really is important for our audience, is how much time and effort you put into cover letter, how much time and effort you put into your resume. It will bear fruit. It is worth the investment. And so I really do encourage people to work with experts. We'll have Chris give the name of the person he worked with. We have a friend of the show, Jill, that was supposed to be on today from Pinnacle Resumes. If you work with someone, I think pays dividends. I always say, for me, I'll review any resume, but there's an art to creating them. My goal was to tell that story. My goal is to create that narrative. That's where I get joy. So, Chris, or Jennifer, what do you think? I mean, you've looked at thousands of resumes. What works, what doesn't work?
It's all about flow. So for anybody who's looking at a resume, if it's choppy or disjointed, it's so simple. Something like font, for example. If I've looked at literally probably over 10,000 resumes in my career, if not more, and one thing you'll know is that people who are in a position, whether it's a recruiter, a hiring manager, or even somebody who's in a hiring capacity at whatever company they might work for, we glance at a resume and we give you maybe 10 to 15 seconds of time. That's it. and that might even be being generous. And if things are all over the place, if they're misaligned, or if perhaps you have, really disjointed fonts, or you have different fonts all over the resume, or if you have really curly stuff or pictures or extraneous stuff, it really distracts. I love to see a clean, clear cut resume. Top of the resume is your contact info. It was funny. I posted on Instagram today. I said, oh, we're going to share on today's show, what's the number one thing you need to do on a resume? And I was talking about something else, and Smart Alec posted on Insta and said, your name. And the person is right. Obviously, your name has to be critical. I've seen people who have left their name, their phone number, their email, or they put the wrong email or phone number. So just easy to contact you info. I love it when people include their LinkedIn URL on the resume. And it's about using the page space on the resume like real estate. Obviously, if you have oceanfront property, you're going to want to build something there. So you don't want to leave these big, wide open white spaces on your resume, because it's going to be an eyesore, and you have only those 10 to 15 seconds to make the impression you want to make. So the other thing I like to suggest to people is the top 2/3 of the resume should be the most important things you want people to know. It's incredible in Chris's case that with the cover letter that they got to page 2, which clearly means that the first 2/3 of the first page of the cover letter were very well written. Otherwise, people just don't scan past that unless they're interested. The same is true of writing a resume. You really want to have, I like to see a summary of qualifications. If education is really important for the role, then you want to have your education in that top 2/3. If it's not, like if you recently graduated from college, or if you have a PhD, or if you have some sort of really important degree that is necessary for the job, don't make somebody go searching to page 2 or 3 of the resume. It's just not going to happen. So make sure to make it clear and evident there in the top 2/3 of the page, and then include your recent dates and a summary of qualifications. One of my favorite things when I used to do resume writing for people is to have 2 to 3 columns that would say key skills. So you would say key skills, and then depending on your profession, obviously, if you're in a design profession, you're going to have things related to design, and you would have 2 to 3 columns of 2 to 3 lines of what this is, just nicely, so it's boom, you can just see it right away on the resume, and the eye gets drawn to it. If it's human resources, you might have things like budgeting, conflict resolution, workers' compensation analysis, whatever it might be, and then you list, say, those 6 things right at the top 2/3 of the resume. And again, anybody who I've ever coached and has used these sort of a format with a clear summary of qualifications, education, a couple highlights of key skills, and then the first little bit about your job, your title on the left and the company on the left with the dates on the right is the way I like to see it. And then have a bullet for every year that you were at that role with an action verb, facilitated, managed, coordinated, immediately followed by a result. So to go back to Chris's point and Brandon's point, to weave that story throughout the resume so people are drawn into that story in the same way that you want to keep watching a movie. You want to find out more about who this individual is who's written this resume. That's my 2 cents.
I think that's 20 cents worth, thousands of dollars right there of advice. Yeah, I really, you're so right about, the way recruiters, for example, make their money, and even people, HR people who are reviewing resumes make their self-efficient is they don't spend a lot of time looking at resumes. They make snap judgments, and that's how quick it is. And so it can't have typos or can't have formatting issues, unfortunately. And if that's not your forte, then once again, working with an expert, it's not my forte, by the way. But I have friends who that is their forte, and I work with them, and they make my stuff look great. But it matters. It matters. And take the feedback. I mean, send your resume to a lot of people and say, will you look at it? Because first impressions matter a ton. I think Jennifer's formatting is beautiful. There's examples online. As I like to say, the only thing I ask is just don't make it too cute. I remember as a recruiter in LA, someone sent me like a map of it was like a subway system. And I can't spend time figuring out your resume. Also, if you've been in a role for 20 years at the same company, or not the same role, at the same company for 20 years, and you've had 20 and you've had 5 jobs, make sure you put all 5 jobs, break it up on your resume. Otherwise, it looks like you've been doing the same thing. And that's not a good look. Yeah, go ahead.
If I can offer something on this, Brandon, because I see this happen quite frequently. Let's say you have had 5 years, or 5 jobs in 20 years. The way to do that is that you want to have the company name again on the left. You want to have the titles italicized, each of the titles. And then what you want to do is you want to have the dates of each role italicized somewhere on that line. And where the company name is, across the line on the right-hand side, you want bolded dates with your overall cumulative dates. And then again, the italicized dates and italicized titles as you go down throughout the resume that line up. And it's a really easy way to differentiate that. So I find that can be very helpful when people are doing this. And as far as samples, if anybody would like, I can send you 2 of my favorite sample resumes. You just need to email us at getyourselfthejob@gmail.com. And if you just say, heard the show, wanted to request the sample resumes, these are the ones that were the template that I've used to help hundreds, if not thousands, of people get hired.
Yeah, I can't overestimate how important it is. If someone wants to see a sample to use it, it helps enormously. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is invented. Use that expert. Chris, we're going to let you go here in a bit, and I can't thank you again for hopping on with us. And I just can't tell you how excited I am for you and the company. You make magic happen, man. And you've worked on so many of the biggest shows out there as well. Chris, one other thing that I do think that you do really well too is you had a great website too, man. Any thoughts on that, on the importance of having something else to showcase your work? I mean, I know it's natural for your business, but yeah.
Yeah, Brandon, for what I do, absolutely. It's like a portfolio, but it's also, like you and I talked about, personal branding site as well. And that goes along with the LinkedIn and the resume. It's the whole package. So when I worked on the resume, the same person also optimized my LinkedIn. But then, and to Jennifer's point, everything has your LinkedIn on the resume. So the web there easily, if there's the web that on the resume, everything you guys had just discussed, I had done. Like in my previous positions, I showed the promotions while I was at a company, maybe 10 years or 6 years, show each different job. And then the progression that was in there as far as getting promoted, more responsibility, larger team. I think all that goes back to what we were talking about, like the storytelling of the resume and the LinkedIn and everything, and then the website as well. The website has contact info, not necessarily the entire resume there, but just the highlights and then a portfolio. So
boom.
Yeah.
I love that. That's that kind of style guide that companies think about, and lookbook. And I love that you talk about it. It all ties in together, Chris. But each thing, I love that you talked about how each thing you used had a different purpose. So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
One quick thing, what's really funny is I used all of it. And to land the position I got, everybody was checking out the website and they were looking at the resume, the cover letter. LinkedIn was getting hit. So I think you kind of do need that full 360 package. Even if it's a simple website, like mine, it happens to be a portfolio site along with other stuff. But even if it's just a personal branding site, it gives you a presence, and it also gives you one more chance to showcase your professionalism.
Boom. You cannot. I love that showcase of professionalism is a beautiful point. These are the moments where people are going to judge whether or not they want you in their company, whether they perceive you as truly a professional they want to be in partnership with. Jennifer, any other questions for our friend Chris before he goes back to his
thank you
awesome
so
family?
much, Chris. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think each and every one of us, regardless of your industry, go buy your domain name. Like I just bought for myself, jenniferkhill.com. And no matter what industry you're in, it does not hurt. You should own your own domain name for whatever it costs, $10 or something like that a year. It's worth it to have a personally branded site, and you can use something like WordPress to create it. And again, it helps with search engine optimization for people to be able to find you and not get confused on who they're looking up. You want to build an overall brand. It's not just about a resume or a cover letter or LinkedIn. It's about the cumulative work and reputation that you've built, and how do you maximize that?
That's so funny. I just bought bamleadership.com. So great minds. I'll have my friend Chris make sure I come across as hopefully as awesome as he does. Chris, I can't thank you enough. I'm so happy for you. You are a true leader and a friend, and I'm grateful to know you, buddy.
Oh, thanks,
yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
This has been great. I really appreciate you having me on. So I'm going to jump off, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks for joining us. You're a great sport for jumping on last minute. Thank you.
I'll see you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, we still have a little time left. Do I dive into a couple more?
Let's just give the greatest hits. I mean, let's go through tips and tricks. You know, I think I wanted Chris on because he did land a job because he had a good resume and a good cover letter. Hard stop. He did the hard work after that, but he is the success story of why this matters. If he didn't have a good resume, if he didn't have a good cover letter, he wouldn't have gotten his foot in the door. It's a big job he's going in for. And he talked about all the ways you can use it. So let's go through step by step what people should be doing. So I think with resume, right, we talked about what not to do. I think what not to do, don't make it too long, but if you're going to but I 100% back to Chris's point, make it too long rather than too short. Do not make it too short. You are leaving out information. And I'm telling you, recruiters and HR leaders, they don't have time to figure out whether you did something if it's not on that piece of paper. So number one, don't make it too short. Two, not too cute, but not too messy. Make sure formatting, all these things, obviously no typos. I think that goes without saying, but we kind of read the same words over and over again. Your, their, whatever. Have someone else read it and then someone else read it. I think that's important. What I would say as for, there's always this question of how many pages. Not less than one, not more than three. You know, I don't care how long you make it, but I don't have this fine science. Whatever works for you. Now, what I do have a fine science for is this. If you're applying for a specific job and you're not reading that job description and tailoring your resume to that job description, you are doing something wrong. I want you to look at the job description and say, and actually see if there's vernacular or words that they use that you're not using in your resume, and add those words, because if they're not there, once again, the assumption is you didn't do it, and you probably did. So make sure you're looking at the job descriptions, tailoring the resume. Jennifer, pat it back to you. We could go all day, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's something important I just wanted to highlight for people, Brandon, because, you know, obviously there are a lot of variations and amalgamations of how your resume might wind up looking. So one of my favorite techniques for people to use is to create a master resume. Your master resume can be 10 pages. Imagine, I'm kind of being facetious, but not. Your master resume should be all encompassing of everything that you've done, every accomplishment, the littlest jobs going back at least 10 years. That's another question I often get asked, is go back about 10 years. If you were at a company 20 years, don't cut it off, certainly include that. But about 10 years, give or take, is what most employers are looking for. And there are occasions too, by the way, if you have something 15 years ago, which is what you want to get back into, absolutely go all the way back to that job 15 years ago, because you don't want to leave that out just because it's 10 years old when that's relevant to what you want to do. So to the point of the master resume, imagine having a resume that it covers everything from A to Z in your career. Now, here is what's wonderful and will save you a lot of time, money, attention later on, is have this master resume as a template for all future jobs you apply for. So then say, for example, that Brandon's point that he just raised, you know, if you're going to apply for a job, and yes, it might be a little bit longer, and you want to highlight some stuff that ties into the job description, all you need to do is cut the stuff out that's irrelevant, look at what's missing, insert what's missing into the original master resume, and cut what doesn't serve you or doesn't serve that job description out. And then voila, you know, when you take the time to create this stellar master resume, and then it becomes super easy and effortless. Yes, you may still need to spend about 30 minutes or so or 40 minutes customizing it, but you're not going to be reinventing the wheel every time, because you'll have the totality of what you need just readily available.
I agree. And such a great point you make. I think that is such an important point. I can't tell you how many times I talked to someone who is 10 years into her career and doesn't have a resume, or is actively wanting to get a new job and doesn't have a resume. It's because it's hard. It's actually really hard to be that introspective and look in. And people have an aversion towards it. I have an aversion towards it. Most of us don't like the process of. That's why there are professionals who do this. And if you want to, work with one. Because we have an aversion. And once you get that master resume, it'll be 100 times easier. But starting from scratch every time is going to be brutal. And, this is one of those things that do not avoid this. Do not put it off. And by the way, if you want to stay your entire career at the same company, if you're one of those people lucky enough to love where you work, awesome. Still create a resume. It might even just help you get a promotion or a raise or just keep your job. You don't know, but you should always have a resume. If nothing else, it's a wonderful exercise to understand your value and all you've done. One thing I will point out is that if you happen to be a subject matter expert, you do something in engineering, and we see all this a lot, you and I, Jennifer, in legal, obviously highlight that, right? The most prevalent thing for me when I was legal recruiting was if you could find an IP attorney with a patent bar or whatever it was, that's it. That's all I was looking for. I didn't care, but if you happen to have that skill set, you're going to get a call from me. So if you want to stay in a profession where you're a subject matter expert, obviously highlight that first. If you don't, though, you want to do the pivot, I don't suggest you highlight that, because all anyone's going to be reaching out to you for is the thing you're an expert in. And that's one of the hard things, right? I mean, I certainly
leave the patent bar off the resume. Honestly, to your point, Brandon, people don't think about that. But I remember years ago when I first started hosting the show that there were people who say if you had a master's degree, they would actually get passed up on for jobs back in like 2010, 11, and 12, because people thought they were overqualified. And so there were many people out there who had master's degrees or higher education degrees, but they were getting passed up. So they wound up taking it off their resume. Same thing. If you are, say, you have passed the patent bar and you don't want to be an IP attorney anymore or a patent agent, take that off your resume. Sure, leave law school on there, and then de-emphasize the stuff you don't want to be doing and emphasize the stuff you love. And you can even incorporate volunteer experience. That's one of my favorite things that I suggest to people. You can sit on boards, you can help charities, etc. I remember I was chairperson of the American Wine Society in Los Angeles for about 5 years. And I included that on my resume because at one point I thought about going into the wine industry, and it was totally relevant experience. Was I doing it full time? No, but I probably spent, 20 hours or so a month doing work for the Wine Society, which was still experience.
Well, and people, and you and I both know this, what people who love wine love to talk about? Wine. I mean, it's just one of those things where people love wine. I'm good friends actually with someone who heads up, is head of marketing at one of the biggest wineries in the world. And God, every year I got to do a training at her company. It's my favorite training of the year. And it's partly because, yes, they make the best wine on earth. And secondly, though, the passion of the people in that room. And you're so right about nonprofit. I just got asked by an amazing leader that I work with, head of HR at a company. She's up for a big Executive of the Year award. And I said, one of the things that these awards look for is what you do for the community, how much you give back. And that matters to a lot of companies. Also, deep cut here, if you happen to be part of your D&I initiative at your company, celebrate that more than ever. Put that there, especially, it's things we learned in high school kind of apply when we're 70. I mean, doing those extracurricular activities can get you further in life. So volunteer. And if you volunteer, it's not just a thing you do, it's a thing you put on your resume, because people love that. Go ahead, Jennifer.
And on that note, Brandon, I will always remember there was a woman, it was 2009. She was laid off Black Friday from Latham & Watkins, which was one of the largest law firms out there. And she was a transactional secretary. So obviously this is when the real estate market just sunk. And when I wound up connecting with her, I think it must have been about 2011, she hadn't had a single job opportunity. There were 0 jobs for that whole 2-year period. But you know what she did? She volunteered. She didn't volunteer in anything related to the law. She volunteered at a local pet place. And what she did is she put on a resume and talked about the administrative skills and the way she helped. And I still remember that, when she wound up temping for us at another major law firm, it was like the first real estate transactional job in 2 or 3 years we got. The employer brought her on specifically because instead of just sitting around collecting unemployment, she was showing that she had
Hmm.
done things to keep her skills fresh. And I'm going to diverge here for one moment because there's another aspect of this story that has stuck with me this whole time. So when I was supposed to actually go down and visit in Orange County where she was temping for us, and that day when I arrived, my client pulls me into her office and she says, "Jen, we're going to hire Susie." And I was like, "Wait, what? It's like 2011. There are no transactional jobs. She's a temp. How are you going to hire her?" And she said, "We're so blown away by her. A great example of just how amazing she is this morning when she came in, she noticed that her attorney had a note on his calendar that he was having lunch with one of their top clients. However, she didn't see a reservation booked anywhere. So she proactively went and booked 3 reservations at the attorney's favorite restaurants so that by the time he got in, he had 3 options to choose from." And I give this story because there are so many examples of how this woman really saw things and went above and beyond. And that's what employers want, no matter what role you're in, whether you're a CEO, whether you're an executive assistant, no matter what career path you may have chosen for yourself. It's about being proactive rather than reactive. She proactively volunteered, she proactively made those reservations. And when you do things proactively, you will naturally attract your ideal job to you.
Bravo on that story. And that's actually one of the things that one of the hard parts for me for being a recruiter, in the way that I did it, and why I love being a coach so much, was one of the things that made me so successful on the recruiting side is that my clients loved me. Not the people I
Mm.
placed, my clients loved me because they would call me like, "This is the best hire we ever made." And I was always reminded, like, you didn't want to hire them. I had to convince you to interview them because they didn't have the experience. They didn't have the background. You wanted this unicorn. And I taught the 3 of those people, and they didn't want to leave their jobs. They were money motivated. I said, talk to this person. They're going to be a cultural fit. They're going to be this. They're going to be that. And those were the clients that stayed in those companies for 20, 5, 10 years. I still get calls from them. And I certainly take that approach in my work, where it is not necessarily that you have companies. If you're listening, don't just hire the person who has all the exact skill sets. And, if you're trying to find your new job, don't go to the company where it's dead to rights. You know what? One of my best friends always says, if you do the same you've always done, you'll get the same you've always got.
Mm.
Do the next thing. Grow. Stretch. I always say that whether you're an executive assistant or a CEO, my definition of leadership is the same: growth mindset. You want to be in a place that allows you to grow and stretch. That client story, that person story you have, is so amazing because it's going over and beyond.
I have to tell you the funniest thing about stretch, Brandon, and this will kind of wrap up after this because I know we're getting close to time here. I remember last year I had some really important meetings. It might have even been before my first interview with Deepak Chopra. And somebody in my life had said to me, "It's important that you stretch before any important meeting because if you have a flexible body, you have a flexible mind." And I had never heard that before. And so now, any day before I have like an important interview or anything, I make sure to make stretching a practice because we get stuck in the physicality of our bodies. And I think it was Amy Cutter does a great TED talk about power poses you can do before interviews.
Amy Cuddy. Yeah.
Cuddy,
And wrote
Cuddy, Amy.
one of the best books on it called Presence. That's how you show up in the world. This is what Jennifer and I have taught you today, or shared with you today, I should say, is how you get your foot in the door so you can do your power poses. And it's funny. I just did a training last week for the Dental Society out of Philadelphia. And, they're hunched over all day. And I said, rather than Amy Cuddy power poses, do power stretches, get that back loose. So I love that. We're synchronized as always. What's our action item? I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think. Make your master resume. Email Jennifer. Reach out to either of us on LinkedIn. But take a look at formats. Make sure you have a resume that is aligned, that you're proud to use. And then I would ask, if you're looking for a job, to look for 5 jobs that you're interested in and see if any of the words they have in their job descriptions are things you've done but aren't in your resume, and add them in. And if you're writing a cover letter, you have a cover letter, talk with passion. But you know what? Cover letters should be written in the moment anyway. You don't need to have it formatted, but you come from the heart, you'll get hired for your heart and your brain. You come from the brain, you'll get hired for your brain.
Great advice, Brandon. And another cool rule of thumb that I would love to offer people often come to me and they say, Jen, I feel like I need to edit my resume. And I say, you can go down a resume editing rabbit hole, right? And I don't want to see that happen to any of you. So here's my piece of advice. If you send out 10 resumes to different companies, you email out 10 resumes, and you get 3 or more responses to those 10 resumes you submit, and those responses have to be yeses, invitations to some sort of first round interview, do not touch your resume. Stop. Don't do anything. Don't fiddle with it. Don't mess with it. You just got a 30% return on your investment of time and energy. Stop messing with your resume. Now, however, if you're somebody and you're sending out 10 resumes and you're getting maybe 1 response or no responses, that's when you want to go out and you want to get that feedback. You want to hire a resume writer. You want to get the help, but don't create unnecessary burden for yourself. So remember that. Don't go down the resume writing rabbit hole.
Boom. That's great advice. That's great advice. I had a tennis coach once say, always change a losing strategy, never change a winning strategy. And people change their winning strategy all the time. If you're winning, keep on winning. And 30%, you're very pure in that 30-30 thing, Hill, that you do.
Yeah, it's all made up. Let's be clear, guys. Everything in life is made up. This is just something that I've found works. Figure out what works for you. If it rings for you, if it works for you, try it on. See if it works. If not, go figure out what does work for you. I'm not the expert at all things. I'm offering you what's worked for me and for the other people. That's the best I can do.
And you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So by whether your resume is perfect or it's crap, get it out there in the world. You never know. But we're going to say for the 100th time, we'll say for 101, you're going to get your resume on the strength of who you are and how you show up, the strength of your network, the strength of you. The resume is the thing that might get you in the door so that you can live your best life.
Go out there, guys. Live your best life. Live your dream. Please don't hesitate to email us if you would like a copy of those sample resumes to getyourselfthejob@gmail.com. Thank you for continuing to be here with us and for supporting the show. We really appreciate you tuning in whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. And if you have a minute, it would mean the world to us. We'd be so happy and grateful if you can take a moment, if you're listening on iTunes, and just take a moment to give us a rating on iTunes. That helps us to grow the show and to reach more people. So please feel free to do that. You can also leave us any feedback or comments on iTunes. You can also interact with us on Get Yourself the Job on the Facebook page, or we recently created a YouTube channel. In case it's easier for you and you prefer YouTube, you can find us. It's literally simple. It's just Get Yourself the Job on YouTube, and would love to hear any feedback or comments that you have there as well. So thank you so much. So grateful and happy to have everybody here with us today, and wishing you a wonderful rest of your week filled with all of your hopes, wishes, and dreams coming true.
You're listening to Get Yourself the Job with Jennifer Hill and Brandon Maslan, only on LA Talk Radio.